Harper Audio presents Waking Up with the Duke by Lorraine Heath, performed by Flosnik. For Franny, when shared with you, laughter is deeper, secrets more hushed, good news more joyous, sorrows less painful, moments always richer, and New York is way more fun, totally. Thank you for including me in your life and offering me the gift of your friendship, and for always knowing the best wines. Chapter 1. Herndon Hall, Leicestershire, November 1860. I'll consider your debt paid in full if you get my wife with child. Ransom Seymour, the 9th Duke of Ainslie, struggled to concentrate as he sat sprawled in a comfortable armchair in the well-appointed library. He'd been downing excellent whisky ever since his arrival at the Marquis of Walford's country estate for his once legendary hunt. After 3 hours, they were both well into their cups, so surely he'd misunderstood. "Does your silence indicate your acceptance of the terms?" Walford asked. Ainslie scrutinized his cousin and long-time friend, sitting in that damned wheelchair where he himself had placed the Marquis 3 years earlier. Walford had aged considerably during that time, his brown hair having gone white at the temples, his brown eyes sombre enough to chase off any gaiety in the room. Ainslie released a dark chuckle. "I've had far too much to drink. You would not countenance what I thought you uttered. Jane wants a child. I can't give it to her. You owe me this." Ainslie pushed himself out of the chair. He'd meant to do so with force. Instead, he staggered and almost lost his balance as he crossed over to the fireplace. He pressed his forearm against the stone mantel to steady himself while he studied the madly dancing flames. Within them he could almost see the night he and Walford had been barrelling wildly through the London streets, the curricle travelling at a dangerous breakneck speed. He'd wondered, but never dared ask, the full extent of Walford's injuries. They'd seen each other seldom in the intervening years, that tragic night a guilty barrier between them. "I owe you your legs, not my seed. You owe me a bloody cock." Inwardly, Ainslie flinched, but he allowed none of his rioting emotions to escape his calm facade. Instead, he concentrated more intently on the fire. The flames, red, blue, yellow, orange, swirled in a macabre waltz, no doubt a preview of what his eternity would most assuredly entail. Writhing within them for his sins, his poor judgment. He'd been all of 25, a cursed age for him and his brothers. Westcliff married at 25 and was betrayed. Stephen marched off to war only to return a lost man. And Ainslie, who was always so damned responsible, managed to destroy a good man's life, and a lovely woman's, and his own, if he was honest about it. "Are you telling me that you can't, that you—" He peered over at Walford. He owed it to his childhood friend to at least hold his gaze when he asked, "That you can't bed her?" "I've got no feeling." Walford pounded his thighs, slammed a fist between his legs with enough force to make Ainslie cringe and the chair creak. "No feeling. She's tried, bless her, she's tried to make it work, but all it does is cause her to weep." Ainslie felt as though his heart had been scored with 1,000 daggers. They'd been in London, celebrating that Jane was at long last with child, was possibly carrying Walford's heir. "I feel remarkably old at 28, Walford, 3 years Ainslie's senior, remarked. "I want to feel young again." So they drank and drank and drank, and although Walford was married, they even visited the beds of a couple of lovelies. Ainslie had never understood Walford partaking in the latter entertainment. If Jane were his wife, "Jane would never agree to this mad notion of yours. She despises me." He hardly blamed her for her attitude toward him. In grief over her husband's near death and debilitating injuries, she'd lost the child. Now it seemed she had no hope of ever having another. She was the sort of woman who should never be denied anything her heart desired. It was his second thought upon being introduced to her at the betrothal dinner that had been held in her and Walford's honour. "If you were mine, you'd never do without." His first thought had been that he wished he'd met her before Walford. So certain was he, but he'd have been able to charm her into his arms. She was the loveliest woman upon whom he'd ever set eyes. Grace and poise mirrored her
Sample complete. Ready to continue?